Welcome to Fairy Stamper, and Collins here, and today we're creating this fall card. Let's go with the products I used to create this card. From Fairy Hugs, the Fantasy Flowers, which is FHS032. And these are nice little detail flowers, silhouette flowers, and now we'll use all four of them. To create our background, we're going to bring in a variety of distressed oxide. We're bringing in mustard seed, carved pumpkin, and crackling campfire. To stamp our flowers, we'll be embossing them, so we'll be using VersaFine, Clair, and Nocturne, and Ranger Clear Embossing Powder. We'll also be adding to our background Imagine Crafts Sheer Shimmer Craft Spray in gold, and there's all the mica powders. We'll be shaking that up. Some coordinating gems for finishing touch. They coordinate nicely with our background. And Barely Arts glue to adhere our project together. And I went ahead to save us some time and die cut some of our pieces. For example, our sentiment here, which is give thanks, I cut it twice out of white cardstock and once out of gold cardstock and adhered them together to create a chipboard piece. I have some accent 80-pound ultra smooth opaque white cardstock, which we'll be using for our background, and a 80-pound brown cardstock that I use a Scallop Slimline die to cut. So now let's get started with our background. We're going to start with mustard seed, and we're going to move on then to carved pumpkin and then crackling campfire. We're going to just do a gradient here. This mustard seed is very, very juicy, so I'm going to tap off a lot of it onto my craft mat here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start placing it onto my cardstock. This piece of cardstock is 2.5 by 7. So it fits nicely, leaving a nice scallop edge all around the card. From there, we're going to move on to carved pumpkin, and I'm using blending brushes to blend, I should say, not place, our ink onto our cardstock. Tapping it off and just go on. I start out a little bit heavier and then I blend out to light. And I'll just keep doing this until I have all 3 sections completed. And I'll blend in between the colors so that they blend even nicer. So right here between carved pumpkin and mustard seed, I'll be blending back and forth between the two until it's a nice smooth blend. Now we're going to move into crackling campfire, which is a nice red, but also has like a orangey undertone, so it's perfect to blend this orange into it. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and again, once we hit the carved pumpkin, we'll blend between the 2 colors until we get it nice and smooth how we want it. Okay, now I'm going to be stamping on here, so we'll need to make sure I heat set our background. But before I do that, I see a little spot that's a little too light, so I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more of the mustard seed. All right, clear these out of the way. I'll bring in my splat box. So I'll be bringing that in here and our sheer shimmer spray. Here's my splat box and my heat tool. All right, so I'm going to give it a quick heat through, not a lot, just a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and shake up my sheer shimmer spray. Make sure all that mica powder that's on the bottom mixes really well. And you want to shake from side to side like a bell, not up and down. And I just like to tap it a little bit on the bottom just to loosen it with on the palm of my hand, and then shake it from side to side. I'm going to use the nozzle that's inside to just go ahead and sprinkle some on. Do some splatters, shake it up some more, get some more of those mica powders going, and go ahead and splat. Now, if you don't feel comfortable pulling out your nozzle sprayer and using that, you can pour some into a little dish or onto your craft mat and use a paintbrush to go ahead and do your splatters. I got a little bit too much there, so I picked it up a little extra up using a little bit of a paper towel. Now that that's all heat set, but I'm going to double check to make sure it's completely set, because we're going to be embossing and we don't want any of our embossing powder sticking to anything we do not want. I'm just going to pour some of my embossing powder on there and make sure it all comes off, and it does. So now I'm going to go ahead and use my anti-static powder, and I have it in this little dish, and I'm using a little, this is a makeup brush. It's like, I think it's called a kabuki makeup brush. I don't do makeup, so I don't know. But I just picked it up and I used that to dust my anti-static powder onto my projects. Alright, so I'm going to set that all to the side, bring in my VersaFine Clair in Nocturne, my stamping platform, and our stamp to go ahead and start stamping our floral images onto our background. This card went together pretty quickly. It's a pretty easy one that you can replicate over and over, and you can even change out your flowers or your design if you want. So now I'm going to go ahead and start setting up my florals where I want them, and I'm fine with them going off just a bit off my panel. That adds a nice continuity of continuation to our card panel. I'm using little pieces of washi tape to hold this this card stock down. It's very lightweight. It's like 80 pounds, but it's more for like Opaque coloring than anything else. So it kind of buckles a bit when I go in ahead and heat set it. So I'm making sure that I use my magnet and a little extra washi to keep it down flat so it's not buckling. Alright, and I'm also going to bring in my dry eraser for that used for dry erase markers and whiteboards. I use that to put firm pressure across my stamp images here so I get a nice crisp image. Now that's done, I'm going to bring in the two smaller ones and stamp them where I would like. I'm going to put this one towards the center, and then I'm going to put the other little one off there, and then I'll use that same little one that I'm fiddling with and repeat that onto the right side. Go ahead and ink that up. I realize when I pick it up, it's just coming up and moving, and I don't want that to happen. Apply my even pressure. And now I'm going to move the washi tape to the other side. I'm trying to stay away from the inked flowers because that is VersaFine Clair. It stays wet a little bit longer, so it's perfect for embossing. So I don't want to touch it and smear any of my ink. I'm going to go ahead and place this here. And I also don't want my flowers to be in a straight row, so I like to move them up and down. It makes it look more realistic because nothing grows in a straight, row. Okay, so now that they're there, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our embossing powder and apply our embossing powder, and it's going to look white until we heat set it, and then it dries clear and glossy. Gonna make sure it's on all of it, make sure I have nice even coverage, and then we'll heat set this with our heat tool. I kept having a little spot there that wouldn't quite get the ink. Okay, I'm at the embossing powder. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and bring in my heat tool, and I start heating from behind to make sure that embossing powder sticks really quick, and then I'll move on top, and you can see it quickly change from that opaque white looking to a nice black glossy finish. Make sure that's all completely melted. It is, and now we can continue with our card. I'm going to go ahead and move everything out and bring our components in for our card. So first we're going to go ahead and add here our card base and our first top panel, or the layering panel, which is that scallop brown, together. And this is basically how our card's going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and I got a little bit of ink actually on the top, so I just quickly did remove that. And I was going to start by putting my adhesive on my panel here, and then I remembered, wait, my card base is a tad smaller than my actual card layer here. So this card base measures, let me see if I can find it really quick, 2 3/4 by 7, and if it's just beneath that brown, so that's layering cardstock, I want just a tiny bit of that scallop to show through because I don't want the white to show through, and that brown panel measures 3 by 7.5. But even with that, I realized, oops, I cut it just a little too wide, so I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit off, and that's where I get it down to 2 3/4. Once I do that and I see, okay, nothing is peeking out, I don't have any white peeking out, I'm going to go ahead and adhere it. luckily I didn't press down firmly on my Barely Art glue. It hadn't set yet. I was able to peel it up really quickly and make the adjustment. So again, I'm going to put some adhesive on our card base, flip it over, and adhere our card base to our card panel. Get it how I want it. Now I'm going to go ahead and adhere our top panel to our card. And it's warped a little bit, but you'll see once we put plenty of adhesive here, place it on there, and I firmly press on the back of it, it is nice and smooth. I'm going to go ahead and take any extra glue that might be showing and clear that off. So I know I want my sentiment to just touch the carved pumpkin area. So I'm going to go ahead and start adding our adhesive, and I'm just putting little tiny dots on the back of our sentiment here, so I don't have a lot of oozing once I place it onto our card base. Just little dots, and I'm going to go ahead and use my tweezers to lift it up. And this is a really fine little bit die here, so it's easier to use my tweezers for placement. I'm going to go ahead and press that, and I'll put an acrylic block on it just to make sure that it sticks. I have my jewels, and I know I'm going to place some around our flowers here, and then some around our sentiment. I have a total of 6 jewels. So I'm going to go ahead and start placing those. And yes, I dropped them several times. And go ahead and put those on there. I had something fuzzy on my pickup stick there, my embellishment wand, and that's why I wasn't picking anything on there. And to be honest, it's probably cat fur, because a cat snuck into my room yesterday. Okay, so we're putting our last embellishment on here, and our card is done. So I'm going to give you a quick little close-ups here. I'm going to see if my camera will focus for you. There we go. Here you have that beautiful gold shine, which is also in the background in a nice subtle way. We have all that beautiful fall colors in our background with the distress oxide and the brown to have nice accented. So again, we use our distress oxide in mustard seed, carved pumpkin, and crackling campfire, VersaFine Clair in Nocturne, our shimmer spray in gold, and our fantasy flowers from Fairy Hugs to create our card. Like always, I will have everything listed in the description box below. Thank you for being here, and I hope you found some inspiration.